let's start with the end of the week, if we can, with the jobs numbers. We lost 140,000 jobs, although last month's numbers were revised up somewhat. People thought that it might be bad. The markets actually seem to think maybe this makes stimulus more likely. Were you surprised by the numbers, and what did they tell us, if anything, about the economy?
I wasn't amazed by the numbers. I think they tell us that we need to get COVID in the rearview mirror. I think they tell us that there's a limit to what kind of recovery we can have when people are fearful of going outside and getting more fearful. And so I think the number one message from this statistic is the importance of doing vaccinating better than we did testing. And it doesn't look like so far we're doing a very good job of that. That's got to be priority one, priority two, and priority three for the new administration.
And how much of that, Larry, will require some very targeted stimulus? Because one of the things that we hear from a lot of people is small business is what it's all about, particularly when it comes to job creation. And obviously, a lot of those small businesses are in things like retail and particularly leisure and restaurants, things like that.
Look, David, it doesn't really matter unless people can go to the store and unless they can go to the restaurant. I think we've done okay with the PPP. I'm more worried about the mass layoffs that have taken place in state and local governments, and I'm more worried about the fear that's keeping people indoors, that's keeping people unable to go out and engage in the kind of spending they want to. And I think the longer we have this and the longer we respond just by throwing money, the more complicated problem we're going to have of a huge pent-up demand whenever we start to make some progress. So I'm very focused right now, less on the macroeconomics than on the having effective public health strategies. And in all honesty, I don't think the only culprit has been the politics of the Trump administration, as terrible as it has been. I think our medical establishment has not planned in the way it should have for a satisfactory vaccine rollout. And I sure hope that is going to change. In a way, David, I link two events. I link the failure to protect the Capitol and the failure to be able to organize the use of all the vaccines that are being delivered.
Take the vaccine, for example. We have something of a raging debate right now between Governor Cuomo on the one hand and the mayor of New York City, Mr. de Blasio, about exactly who's setting out the rules. Because de Blasio is saying, wait a second, you've got your rules so strict that it means we can't get everybody vaccinated. You should loosen them up some. Who should be calling the shots? As a matter of competence, where should the decision-making be?
I think that's a hard thing to judge. In general, I think we need to be putting more responsibility on the federal government in some of these areas. And I think that having things be invented and reinvented 50 times is often problematic. I think with respect to vaccines, we need to focus on getting as many people vaccinated as possible. And I think by designing optimal algorithms according to philosophers and epidemiologists, we have probably made a sacrifice in terms of effectiveness. And I put more emphasis on getting as many jabs into arms as possible. I also don't think we've done the research in the right way, done the planning in the right way with respect to the issue of one versus two vaccines. And I hope when this is over, there'll be an investigation, not just of all the political terrible stuff Trump has done, but also of some of the thinking and decision-making in the medical community. I cannot understand why we did not do more testing and studying that would have enabled us to be making more intelligent judgments right now about first-time versus second-time vaccinations as the optimal use for controlling the public health problem. I can't understand why we're holding large inventories to give people second doses when there are people whose lives could be saved today. Even if we can't postpone the second doses, we surely can rely on production several weeks from now as the basis for the second dose and use all the doses that we have today. I don't think this is a pretty picture at all. And I think among those who are going to have to do a lot of rethinking are the health and the public health profession. And I would suggest that we've had private health norms in a problem that requires public health solutions.
Larry, let's come back to what the politics could do affirmatively when it comes to the pandemic here. What could be done in Washington? As you referred to, we had just a stunning, harrowing event this week with that assault on the Capitol, really an attempt at armed insurrection. It is no less than that. How might that affect what President Biden, when he is president, can get accomplished in the Congress, particularly when you add the fact we also had, by the way, this week, 2 seats from this in the Senate go to Democrats from Georgia, so it means that he has an effective, if narrow, majority.
It is going to be much, much more difficult to go into reflex opposition to a set of policies that come from the moderate center. And there's a big set of policies, whether it's infrastructure investment, whether it's strengthening education, whether it's making investments in technology that enable us to compete with China. The chances that we can really build back better, those chances have gone way up. I still think there's a prospect that we're going to fix things and get things together. And a couple months from now, the vaccination process is going to be back on track. And with it, the economy is really going to be taking off. And if Joe Biden has that momentum, the Republicans have a desire to show that, frankly, they're not crazy. And the best way to demonstrate that is going to be for their moderates to cooperate. I think we can see more progress, and there's a larger window than I would have thought plausible a month ago. Now, that's no certainty, and it could easily not happen, but the prospect of more has to be much more there than anybody thought likely a month ago.
Let's wrap up with a quick round of Summer Says, and let's start really where you just laid off. The first question is, it looks like there's likely to be more stimulus. What's the right way to do that and the wrong way to do that?
More health, more state and local government, getting started on infrastructure, not just sending people checks when disposable income is running already very high.
Number 2, infrastructure. You've mentioned it more than once. What are the chances that we'll get a really substantial infrastructure package within the next 6 months?
50-50 or a little better than that, and that's a much higher number than I would have given a few months ago.
And finally, number 3, China relations will be sort of toward the top of the foreign policy agenda for the Biden administration. What is likely they will get better or get worse?
I'm not very optimistic. It seems to me China's seeking to take advantage of our moment of weakness in quite problematic ways.